Hello, I'm Mark Doty. I am a trustee of the Griffin Trust, and I am delighted to be talking with Anne Lauterbach today. Anne's book, Door, is a finalist for this year's Griffin Poetry Prize. And although we are almost neighbors, we live in fairly close together in small towns in upstate New York, we have not met. So it's a real delight to get to talk to you, Anne.
Thank you. You too.
I wonder if you would kick us off by reading a poem.
Sure. Do you have one in mind?
I do. We'll see if you're up for it. It's a poem called Habitat, which I think is remarkable.
Wow. Okay. I'll do
The
my best.
one, but not that long.
Okay. Excuse me. Do not partition or curtail the fearful crowd. They are already stranded. Your belts and sandals will not reach them in their wandering distress. I myself will be wearing a stole with tassels. Sometimes choices are words, sometimes they come as tactile objects to be touched. The contingent of insurgent migrants moving swiftly over the stark terrain, they have no time for these niceties or what is kept under our vestments, dangerously excitable. Today, in the shower, I was recalling orgasm as a layered volume of flow, so intricately woven as to be the sensed motion of time slowly opening. Now at last it is raining. These weathers are included as a reminder that our inner and outer beings are breathing into the seams of the day, and that the temporal scansion is as uninhabitable as a rainbow. The clock, however, is full of accusations and praise meted out into the days. It cannot know the barefoot figures fleeing toward the harbor, their faces illumined, their limbs arcing into shadow wings. It cannot know how light dilates evening. And dreams? What of them? They will bleed through. Will they bleed through, find a way to tell of our passage, relate grass and stream, three coyotes basking on the hill, swirl of cloud, the hawk's high whistle, no camera, no lamp, no held image to capture the unpredictable path. Enlightenments, vistas, storied performances, everyone up close and sweaty with desire, montage of the nameless boy with his entourage of lovers. They climbed to the top of the spire as I watched the boy and two girls wearing blue shorts that flared in the wind. And then they could not find a way down, their bodies entangled in metal casements. Meanwhile, branches had been collected and arranged, stapled to a wall, but no one had thought to find water, so they began to wither, their leaves browned and stiff. And the woman from the gallery wept and tore her skirt into ribbons that the bowerbirds took. The bowerbirds weren't in the dream. They are a distraction. You can look them up on TikTok, where there are other pranks, jokes, dances, and tricks that resemble dreams. What happened? The secular spirit gropes for solace and refuge. The painter could see the scene depicting the sainted monk in his habit among birds, depicting the ravished angels strewn across the blue wall's firmament in a storm of grief. These figments, stories without witness, rendered as material fact. And so we stare at their silence, its reservoir of the miraculous offered on trust.
Thank you. I think the ending of that poem is so lovely and so exactly nails the experience of looking at art from other times, art with a different kind of idea about the nature of the world, and the hunger we feel to share that kind of idea or something of its spirituality, something of its resonance. It's beautifully said. Just beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. That reference is to Giotto.
I assume because of the previous poem in the book, which is called Giotto, yes?
Right.
Or Giotto, the Hand, something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a particular, is St. Francis? What is the particular painting?
Yeah, it's St. Francis, but it's the whole cycle of the St. Francis in the Arena Chapel in
Right.
Padua. Yeah.
You have a way of looking at things that seems to me uniquely yours. And it has something to do with, I feel when I'm reading your poems as if I get to inhabit this sort of liminal moment between when we first perceive something and then we have words for it. You know, there's a time when we don't know what we're looking at, or we can't exactly say what we're looking at. And in that time, we're capable often of perceptions that are not cliches, you know, that are not familiar ways of seeing what we see. So in what you say about orgasm, for instance, that extraordinary line, which would you quote just that bit? I was asking you this in the middle of the morning, but you know.
It's okay. When I wrote this, I was very nervous about it. I thought, can I really put this in a poem? I mean, it was really, it was very funny. Okay, so I kept under our vestments, dangerously excitable. Today in the shower, I was recalling orgasm as a layered volume of flow, so intricately woven as to be the sensed moment, the sensed motion of time slowly opening.
Fantastic. That feels to me absolutely accurate and like nothing I've ever heard before as a way of describing this physical sensation as a kind of felt time and a felt opening and fusion of time. That's remarkable. Yeah. A little later in the poem, you talk about how the scansion of time is as uninhabitable as something of the rainbow.
Rainbow, yeah.
Yeah, remarkable. And so absolutely true that clock time is not something we can live in. We live in something far more fluid. And your poem so beautifully captures that, how attention moves in time, time slows down, speeds up, and how democratic your attention is. You know, that you go from Giotto to orgasms to TikTok to what's happening on the street. I mean, I love that. And you even tell us something about the composition of the poem when you say that, well, weather is included here because, you know, I need to say that again. What is it that weather is there in order to?
These weathers are included as reminder that our inner and outer beings are breathing into the seams of the day, and that the temporal scansion is as uninhabitable as a rainbow. I mean, I'm very, very interested in this, in the transition, I guess, between an inner space and an outer space. And that's why the poems are not strictly descriptive of seeing, as you just called it, a vision. It's really about what happens inside when you encounter someone or something. It doesn't have to be a painting, it can be a person. And that interior space seems to be increasingly erased in our life generally, because everything is on the surface and everything is very fast. And so this attention to the interior seems to be disappearing. And the whole book is really about the attention to the interior, and to the need for us, you know, if there's any kind of possible spiritual space or a place of belief or a place of trust, that has to come from an interior, has to come from thinking about things, not just reacting to them. So there's this tremendous need on my part to assert that, you know, that slowness or that turning away or that turning inward, but not in order to talk about myself. And that becomes a very complicated negotiation poetically, because it's not because I want my interior to be known. I want the idea of the interior to be felt, right? To be understood.
And thus the habitat then is the interiority in which we live or could live.
Yeah,
habitat.
Yeah,
and
it's pointing to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that poem winds up with trust. That's the last word there, yes?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we offered something we could trust from art. It seems like such a admirable goal, something that you know I would want art to do.
I think basically I feel that trust is the thing that we are. There's another piece of a poem that says, what if the dollar said, in God we care, because I think that trust and care are related to each other. And I think that the trust in our institutions, not to get polemical, it has eroded almost entirely, so that it's not just the trust that happens. What I was trying to say about the painting is that we have to, that let's say Giotto had enough belief in something that was miraculous to paint it, to actually paint the miracle. And so we stare at that and we have to believe it on trust, because we don't have that same sense of the miraculous. We've lost that. And so the painting is there to remind us that we're capable of that, in that poem, it says, what happened, the secular spirit gropes for solace and refuge. So we're in the secular spirit place, and it's ripping the world apart because we don't have any trust in anything. I mean, not only spiritual matters, but pragmatic and political matters. So the poem, this book is also a sort of desire to remind us that we need to trust each other and our institutions and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I think you use the word unwitnessed to describe the miracles that Giotto is painting. I love that idea that we have to trust something we haven't seen, and that might be, the good faith of other people, or it might be the integrity of the institution, or the possibility of democracy. Yeah. Yeah, lovely.
And all of that is based on language, and so, I don't think that Giotto was painting things he actually saw. He was painting things he believed in. So it's a kind of interesting notion to think about how the material world, it does not have to be just the place of acquisition. The material world is also a proof of certain kinds of cares and skills and desires and all of these other much less obvious things than whether it's valuable in the commercial sense. So
we have this great American tradition of the natural world as a place of instruction. When we look at the world, we can be taught, we can find out how we can best live.
Well, one starts with an Emersonian always in my place.
Oh,
so
right, yeah, me too. And Walt Whitman, the greatest of the Emersonians, in some ways. The Door. The book is called Door. Could you talk about that central image, that metaphor?
Well, yeah, I guess. I think I've been interested all my writing life in transition, in the unstable and the mobility of things and the motion of things. So the door is the kind of classic, I guess, transitional object where you go from inside to outside, or you cross a threshold, and there's a whole feeling I have that thresholds are important, that if we could move across and through, it's much more interesting than moving up, for example, or down. So I think I have a desire for people to understand horizontality as a very important way to live across the horizon, rather than thinking about climbing ladders and getting somewhere by going up. I think you get somewhere by going across. So the door is the figure of transition and the possibility of a certain kind of notion of opening. In one of my books, I have a whole section called Task to Open. So this idea of opening your hand, or opening the door, or opening your eyes, or opening anything. So you're opening toward the world rather than closing down from it. And the door just is this wonderful image. And also, I think I live up here where I'm in the car a lot, and so I'm aware of doors. You know, I look at doors, and in this part of the world, people paint their doors very bright colors, and there's something about that that seems very touching in some way. That there's a need for the door to be people to be aware of the door. And again, it goes back to the earlier part of our conversation, which is the idea of the interior and the exterior, right? So
there are a number of poems in the book called Door, and
yeah.
you think of those as then a kind of horizontal movement into other spaces, into other time zones, into other kinds of perception. Where are we going when we go through those doors?
I guess you go to the next page.
Okay.
But I just like the idea that the book that the page is like a door, because you know, it actually behaves like a door. So there's a kind of doubling there of the notion that when you turn a page, you're opening a door. You know, you're opening another world or another time or another situation. So and I'm not there are a number of poets who have used the same title across a book, but this one seemed about really accurate for that idea, that there was a way that, and it ends with a door to basically to indicate that the end of the book is not the end of opening, even though you close the book.
Sure, but it still feels like a spatial progression, which was really interesting to me. I did not feel that I was moving to a new section or a new idea as much as into another set of rooms or
I think
outdoor
that's
space.
right. I think that's right. I think that's right. I think that that I love that idea that every room in a house has a different way of being, as it were, or way of looking or behaving, you know, or we behave differently in different rooms. But put it that way. Yeah.
Are you a fan of Joseph Cornell?
Say what?
Are you a fan of Joseph Cornell's work?
Oh yes, of course.
Right. In a way, those spaces feel like doors that have opened, and here we have this beautiful box that is both intimate and just immense. And I can see a relationship to your poems and those.
Oh, that's interesting. I was just in Chicago, and I saw a whole wall of Cornell boxes.
Yes.
They have a huge collection. Yeah. Yeah.
Extraordinary. Well, what would you like to? You probably just have a few minutes left here. I wonder what you would like. What would you like readers to know about the book?
So the book came together, you know, slowly, the way everything comes together slowly, and it's always a kind of wonderful experience to gather what you've written over a period of time and see what it is that that is connecting all of the poems together, that you didn't notice while you were writing them. That isn't really answering your question. I don't know what I would like people to know.
Very good answer. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we might be done.
Good, wonderful.
Yeah, great pleasure to talk to you. And I think this is a really fine introduction to the book, which will help open a door for readers into it.
I hope so. Thank you very much.